So you've just booked your wedding venue, or you're on the cusp of doing so. And one of your wedding photographer's jobs is to make sure that they capture the atmosphere of that venue, whatever its vibe may be. You chose it for a particular reason. If you take a look on Champagne Shutter's website, you will see my tagline, making a connection. I think it's really important in picking your wedding photographer that you pick a personality that you're in your comfort zone with. I see a lot of websites stake out that their entire approach is just documentary. And that's a really important thing that should be probably the majority of your day. It's a celebration, not a photo shoot. However, if you are just getting a documentary approach, I'm not convinced that that suits those of us who are a little more introverted. Not everybody is as extrovert as this sister of the groom. Not everybody in this shot is extrovert necessarily, but this one was a little bit posed because a champagne spray needed some direction. This one, on the other hand, is an extrovert who has totally been candidly captured. Equally, not every moment of your wedding is as emotionally charged as this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. And so in getting the right wedding photographer that you feel in your comfort zone with, that little bit of stage managing and direction comes into play. All I've done here is ask Abby to lean against the window frame and look out of the window. It's not awkward. It's not something that's taken loads of orchestration. It's certainly been totally unobtrusive. And I've just gotten Taylor to frame the shot. Then, very quickly, inside a couple of seconds, I'm around the other side, shooting the other way, and simply asking Taylor to look out of the window and use the window light. I could go for that vibe and leave him as he is. I could ask for 1,000-yard stare if I wanted a slightly different dynamic. Then, all I need to do is ask him to look at his wife, and whatever naturally happens, happens. Not long after this moment in their wedding day, I asked Abby and Taylor if there was anything in particular that they felt we hadn't done over the last few hours, from prep through to after their ceremony. And Abby said to me, I hope that we've got some sort of spontaneous capturing of us laughing, because that's us. And it had already happened here. Nevertheless, I still went on to say, well, let's create one of those. Sometimes I just say, come on, laugh. And of course that doesn't work, but it's awkward enough that they start to have a giggle. In this instance, I actually said to Taylor, whisper something naughty in her ear, or something like that. I think I actually phrased it differently. I think I said whisper something dirty, whisper something sexy, which, unless I already knew them, unless I'd already worked with them on an engagement session, isn't apt anyway. I also did not intend for him to actually do that, and I knew he wasn't going to. In fact, he said, I don't think I can do that with you there, and started to giggle and laugh, which is what I've then captured here. And that snapshot was my intention all along. Maybe I've ruined that image for everybody because I've said that now, but I swear that their mums and dads would get the dynamic of a natural laugh from that. It looks totally natural, and just that little bit of directing helps. Here, I've wanted to dial down the exposure to make it dimmer around them and bring them out. All I've asked here in terms of a direction is very simple. I've said make sure that you go up and anticipate a kiss rather than actually kissing to her furthest cheekbone from camera, so that we get that elegant look. And at the same time, my second is capturing a different angle that I've edited all together differently. Totally elegant. Here, I want to make a shot of the dress, make sure that that detail is captured. It looks like a twirl, but actually I'm just getting Abby to hold a particular part of the train and swing back and forth a little bit so that we get the elegant shot. Is the chapel here at Burntwood usually pink in the background? No, I've done that because that's Abby's colour. Because then, very quickly, within a second or two, we can go and do this without it becoming something that is really, really laborious for the couple. Again, a slightly different dynamic. Posing gets really demonised when what people really mean is that they feel slightly awkward about this. And they do just need that little bit of direction from a personality that they feel in their comfort zone with. Here, for first look of the bride, I've actually led Dad into the room by the hand, looking down or with his eyes closed, so that I can set up exactly the right dynamic, keep his eyes closed, slightly awkward as that may be, with a place of trust of me, so that when I've come round back behind Sam so that I can frame things up for the storytelling of this shot, I get something that appears completely candid. And in the next moment, capture something that is genuinely candid. Not everything that looks natural hasn't had some stage management ever so slightly by me. Equally here, is Keenan's natural inclination necessarily to kiss Ella on the shoulder? That's none of my business. That's an intimate thing between them and none of our business. But by giving that very simple instruction that isn't awkward, we get a very elegant shot that I equally had already seen as black and white, with that little bit of colour coming through in the signage behind, because that captured the vibe and the mood of their wedding venue. This one, equally, is no great shakes in terms of having to do lots of posing. Ella's simply looking out, and she knows that she's a framing device here and that she's out of focus, so she doesn't need to feel awkward. There's nothing to it. Keenan already knows that he is looking at her, not me. He knows that he is putting weight on one leg and looking natural. He already naturally knows that because he's already worked with me on their engagement shoot, where we've set out 2 or 3 basic go-tos in regard to 3/4 angles and weight on one leg and hands in pockets or other hand round small of back for that natural kind of look. This one, I've asked them on a cold and rainy day where the biggest rainstorm had come through known this year, whether they were happy to spend 2 minutes coming out across the meadow without getting too wet so that I could frame this shot up of the taller reeds. It looks totally natural. He's been told to lead and look back at her, but for all you know, it's a completely candid shot and happens to be my favourite one of their day. This one, on the other hand, during groups, is completely spontaneous and was just them chatting to one another and looking at friends. That might well be theirs. Was it worth spending the time to do a backlit silhouette shot? Absolutely. But choose your planning through your expert photographer, and you can do that, followed by a much more natural one that's lit differently, followed by something as extrovert as a champagne spray, if that's your thing. Is it worth taking a couple of minutes with one of the groomsmen with a light on a pole to do this? Yeah. It's also my job as an expert to see little things like this that are not an image in and of themselves, and another thing like this that is not an image on its own, and change it to create this. Abby told me that she had spoken to the dress supplier and she wanted as long a veil as was feasible. I think this is a record breaker. Is it worth the 2 minutes to get my second photographer to toss it in the air and run out of shot fast so that I can put something together like this? Absolutely. With a good deal of editing in between, might I add. Was it worth getting the best man to dash out of shot on this one? Yeah, and you've already seen him as the groom in some of the earlier images. Would I have ever thought of this garter shot? No, I wouldn't. But Hannah said to me that her Huddersfield Town garter was an important joke for Dom and a surprise for him. and that's how this came about. But equally, my use of that light blue colour as the backing light of the silhouette is my homage to his favourite team. Those two images are 2 minutes apart in the same bright sun of the afternoon. This one is my favourite image of the day and completely different, but it's in the same half an hour as the last two. Engagement sessions are a really good way of getting to know one another and are currently a complementary part of my packages. Abby and Taylor here have been asked to look as though they are moving in anticipation of a kiss, but they aren't going to overlap the profiles of their faces. Then they've been asked to turn around and do this. Do they know why they're doing that? Not necessarily. They might be thinking, what's he up to? But the resulting image is this. It's my job and my artistic vision to turn dusk on your engagement shoot into a shot like this. It's worth me taking that extra few seconds at a venue like this one that's very suited to a tuxedo look when I ask Nathan to look out the window into the window light and I'm asking him to give a 1,000-yard stare, to just bear with me for a few extra seconds while I line up what I'm doing in front of the lens to get just the perfect reflection. It's equally my job and my artistic vision to spot something like this that to your eye might look perfectly okay, when actually it's taken quite some edits of exposures to get it to this stage, to turn it into a wow shot of you as a couple that captures this atmosphere. It's an easy enough job to ask your bride to stand at one side of the entrance and ask the groom to stand at the other and lean back and ask her to look over at him, or vice versa. Posing gets a bad name, and it's not posing, it's just that little touch of direction that makes all the difference. Does it feel natural to you to be asked to both get under the veil? No. Is it for me as a third wheel to be under there? Not at all. But the elegance of what comes out of it, and doesn't take a long time, is all worthwhile. Again, I've asked Nathan here to go in and kiss, or make as though kissing, the upper cheekbone on the furthest side. Whether they necessarily understood the notion of them both facing one another and facing away from me in front of that entrance matters not when those two things are combined within an edit. Also a good way of showing off the rings. Claire and Gabriella here on their engagement shoot were asked to bear with while I kid you not, held up a piece of plumbing in front of my lens for this image. Claire told me that I'd have my work cut out with her in regard to getting instructions, and here it would not have been a natural feel at all for me to ask Gabriella to face in profile to one side and face away and be the framing device for Claire here. But as unnatural as that set of little instructions might be, dead simple and a really elegant, beautiful portrait as a result. It's part of artistic vision for me to see this and turn it into this. Or this. Or this. The most important thing that I'm trying to say to you here, ladies and gents, is once you've decided on your venue and you are looking for the photographer that's going to capture your day, please don't think that because you are not sure about photography, or you don't have an eye for it, or you are not used to big cameras, that you need to feel awkward. If we make a genuine connection, if we chat about your wedding plans, if we go on one of my complimentary engagement shoots so that we get used to working with one another already, then you're in your comfort zone with me to say something daft and get a laugh, or to just give those little tweaks and bits and pieces of instructions, just the slightest direction, not tons and tons of posing that needs to be demonized, that makes for the most elegant portraits that will go in your album forever. That's my approach. And if it sounds good to you, you might want to jump on a Zoom call with me or give me a ring. I will leave my number and email address below, and we can move forward in chatting about your plans that way.